Hello, all, and welcome to Frame by Frame, where we take a closer look at iconic film scenes. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And in this episode, we will be discussing the dinner party scene from Frances Ha. If you want to watch the scene, check out the link in our show notes where you can experience the scene before we dive in fully. So, Sarah, quick summary, what happens in this scene?
Yeah, in this scene, Frances is with a group of people at a dinner party and things are awkward.
They are so awkward. And sometimes dinner parties are really awkward, you know what I mean? Like, we got nothing, no other stimulation other than each other's brains and thoughts and opinions and feelings. So, yeah. Okay, well, Sarah, as we dive in to take a closer look at this scene, I'm curious, what makes this scene from Frances Ha so iconic to you?
Yeah, I think this scene is iconic just because of the awkwardness and cringiness. Frances is a pretty awkward individual in this film, and that's part of her charm. And it's so interesting to see her in a situation where she is her full self, and the other people in the room are not picking up what she's putting down. And everything in this scene helps to contribute to just that awkwardness of this interaction. It's such a cringy scene, and I love how everything comes together to really emphasize that feeling and how uncomfortable Frances and everybody else must be. But they just got to keep going because you're stuck at a dinner party together. So I love how powerful that feeling of awkwardness is. It's so effective. It's so uncomfortable. What about you? What about this scene from Frances Ha is so iconic to you?
Yeah, this is such a fabulous scene. It is so memorable from the whole movie in general. I think such a representation of what makes Frances so charming and earnest. And I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is how real and raw she is. And it's so much in contrast with this kind of fake, posh, try hard nature of everybody else at this party that are trying to be and maybe are like sophisticated and highbrow. And they're talking about like these bigger things, and she's one of us, you know, like she's just a normal human being trying to navigate and figure out life. And so I think the relatability of that feeling of disconnect that she's experiencing is really like comforting to watch, to be like, oh, it's not just me. That it sometimes finds myself in these interactions where you're like, this is just, we are not vibing, this is not flowing. But I think what stands out is how much Frances is so authentically her. And there's something about that no matter who it is, when they're being their authentic self, it is so inspiring and so admirable that she's not bending to try and fit in and try and be somebody that she's not. She really is just herself. I think there's these moments where you see her almost attempt to try and like pretend to keep up with everybody, but ultimately like she is just so unabashedly and fearlessly her, and it makes for a very entertaining and awkward, cringy dinner party sequence. But I think that dynamic and the kind of juxtaposition of her authenticity and her honesty is really refreshing and is very much in contrast with everybody else around her.
Yes. I love how she really is the only interesting person at this table. Like,
Right?
she is the one that I want to spend time with and have a conversation with. Everybody else, I'm like, oh, no, we don't have anything in common. And I love that Frances, to your point, is continuing to try. And she's trying to engage in these conversations and trying to connect with these people and trying to share stories and like welcome them into her world. And they are uninterested and they are giving her nothing in return. It's so uncomfortable to watch, but it's also, like you mentioned, really endearing to just watch her try.
I think it's like somewhere in the beginning of the scene where she asks the dude to her left or her right. She's like, "So what do you do?" I know it's like a really stupid question, but I feel like I'm supposed to ask it. So like, cool, like, yeah, what do you do? And it's so fascinating because that is totally what we all do when we are, like, meeting new people and doing the whole small talk game is, like, we ask them their job, and I'm like, "This is probably the least interesting thing about you," but, like, we just do it. It's a sense of identity, it's a conversation topic that is, like, reached for so frequently, and you see her just kinda doing that because that's what she's known and experienced too, but I love her acknowledgement of, like, "It's such a stupid question, right? But, like, we're doing the dance, so, like, I gotta ask you." And I thought that was so funny and so endearing and how she's just so honest, like, "This is kind of a dumb question, but I feel like I'm supposed to ask this question in this moment."
Mhm, and then when he asks it back to her, how she just struggles to answer, it's so funny, and every one of her interactions in this scene, she's trying, and they're just they're speaking different languages to each other, and there's just no connection happening, and it's so interesting in this scene in the larger context of the film because we've watched her connecting with other people really easily all throughout the film, and she has friends, and she has this, like, really vibrant life, and then we see her here just struggling no matter what she tries, and so I think that contrast is also really valuable in the overall, like, narrative of the film.
Yeah, absolutely. She has such a way with people, but not these people because they are they are doing this other dance of wanting to like put on this facade of going to Paris, and talking about like, their endeavors and whatnot. And she's just but I think it's also reflective of another theme in the film overall, which is Frances is so much in this growing period of maturing and accepting herself and celebrating how she is wired and also having the understanding that there are people that are for you and there are people that are just not your cup of tea and you see that maybe hasn't clicked fully for her yet where she hasn't fully understood and realized like it's okay that these are not my vibe and I will find my people and my tribe and so you still see her trying to fit in somehow in her own way. So, it was really notable to me. I hadn't remembered this detail. I One of the sequences I love in this movie is the whole when she decides to go to Paris and it is like nothing like she expects it to be, this magical adventure. It is complete opposite. But I didn't realize until watching it this time around that the whole inspiration for that Paris sequence comes from this scene where they're talking about weekending in Paris or whatnot earlier. And then when she's leaving, she announces that, oh, by the way, I'm going next weekend. So I thought that was interesting and helps add so much more meaning and color to the Paris sequence, knowing that it comes from this dinner party where she was around these people that she kind of wants to be like, more like, and Paris was her way to try and do that. So even the way that that's like her final exit moment is her announcement of going to Paris, which they clearly know she was not planning to, I think is also a really funny aspect of this scene.
And I love that that comes back around again because they were talking about Paris pretty early on in the scene, and so it's been a good chunk of the dinner party, and she's still thinking about it, and that's what she chooses to end with, and again, that's just such a relatable thing, how you'll have a conversation or you'll hear something, and it's just gonna stick in your head, and you're just replaying it over and over and over again, even while you're doing different things or having different conversations, and I love that little detail. It wasn't like they were just having that conversation. Nope, this was potentially hours ago, and she brings it up again as her as her parting words to this really awkward group.
Her parting words. Oh my gosh, it's so great. It's so great. One of the things that I also found really interesting with the scene and just a kind of a filmmaking aspect is how many times throughout the dinner party sequence there are clear cuts and shots of just other guests at the party and them kind of rolling their eyes or making a face or showing signs of frustration in response to her. I think it's like obvious that like this is the vibes are not vibing in this dinner party sequence, but I thought it was so interesting too that the film is specifically showcasing that feeling of judgment that I'm sure Frances was feeling, but also like showing it explicitly to us as the viewer to also feel and experience that with her of this kind of encroaching feeling of judgment. I thought that was some really smart filmmaking choices that really add to the feeling of empathy that we have for our main protagonist as she's navigating this tough dinner party conversation.
Yeah, and I love how much we can constantly see what else is going on in the room when she's talking. So it'll cut to other people having different conversations at the same time, or even when the camera is pointed at Frances, we're able to see people like passing food or like pouring drinks or whatever. So there's this real sense of place, and we understand where she is in the room, but also where she is in conversation and what else is going on in that room with her as she's trying to communicate. So it's not just like she's talking and everybody's paying attention to her, but everybody's doing their own thing. They're constantly moving, they're eating, they're passing stuff. All of this action is happening while she's trying desperately to connect to someone, and they're all wrapped up in doing something else instead of listening to her, really.
Yeah, yeah. You can feel how much she is speaking, but they are not really engaged. And when they are engaged, they are passing judgment and making faces and rolling their eyes. And so that that because we essentially feel the audience of the dinner party that Frances is feeling as her audience, that they are not listening, they're not engaging, and that they are also forming all of their opinions in their minds as she is speaking and telling some long-winded story as she does. Yeah, it really helps add to the feeling of ambiance and the kind of tension and atmosphere in the air as she's sharing her soul. She's so vulnerable and open with them. It's really endearing.
It really is. And then I loved kind of toward the end where she's talking about meeting your person and your eyes meet across the room and you have this connection. And that whole time, the camera is stationary and trained on her. And so we are, as the audience, able to like fully absorb what she is saying. And we are able to have this moment of connection with her as she's expressing this deep longing that she has. And then the camera cuts to everybody's faces, like you were saying. And it's all this like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with her? So I love how the camera plays with this as well. And the camera, there's such deliberate choices of how to frame Frances, number one, but then when to have a long shot and when to include these cuts to really maximize our empathy in what Frances is feeling in that exact moment.
Yeah. No, it's so funny because that whole monologue that she gives is one of the most iconic things, parts of this movie, scenes of this movie, quotes of this movie that I feel like is often circulated when you think of Aunt Frances Ha. And this camera being still is such an indication of like how we're feeling as well, where we're captivated. Like we're hanging on to her every word. And then like you mentioned, we cut and they're just so disengaged. But the the camera loves Frances. Like the camera believes and is telling us as the viewers, like, this is worthy of being still for. Like, take in this moment, hear every word of what she's saying, and soak in it. Like, the camera's not distracting us at all. It's actually asking us to be still and to listen. And I love that. Like, the camera adores Frances. The other people in this party do not, but the camera is inviting us to, like, come alongside and also adore her as well as she's sharing her soul.
And it's so effective
Yeah.
because we do. Like, every time we get to that scene and it's just still on her and she's just pouring her heart about this is what she desires. And I'm like, yes, Frances, I want that for you too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good. It's so good. And obviously, I think it was really fun watching this scene more closely and seeing how much Greta does an incredible job of bringing Frances to life in all of the small little physical movements, the way that she paces what she's saying and pauses at the right moments and like awkwardly laughs at the right moments. I just thought that like bringing that awkwardness to life, but also the earnestness and the quirkiness of Frances to life, Greta does an incredible job of as well. It's a lot of small little detail and how the where she's even looking. A lot of times when Frances is speaking at this dinner party, she's sometimes just looking down, like she's not even looking at the other people. And so that's also such a signal of how she doesn't feel totally comfortable and is sharing a lot, but also feels awkward about sharing a lot. So she's looking away. And so some of those little details, those physical details that Greta Gerwig brings to this character was particularly noteworthy this time, taking a closer look as well.
And I love the way that the camera frames her, particularly when they're around the table and she's having that conversation with the guy who's sitting next to her. And she's never in the center of the frame. She's always off to the right, and then you can fully see the dude, and then you can see somebody's like head kind of like partially blocking the camera who's sitting further back at the table. And I loved that. We don't get a lot of, like reverse shot stuff in this. We get a little bit of it, but it's she is not the center of the attention in this film or in this scene, because nobody else really is paying attention to her except for us. And so she's off center. She has to share the frame with these other things that are going on. And I think that just helps enhance all of those mannerisms, because she's not taking up the full frame. She's only taking up a part of it, which already makes her feel smaller. And then she's doing things like looking down, or even the way that she moves, sometimes it's smaller and it's confined, and we're seeing this character that is normally big and loud and will take up space and will like dance around and like do all of these things. She is confined to this one chair in 1/3 of the frame as she is just trying to connect over dinner. So I think the camera and Greta's performance just combine so well to help us understand what Frances is feeling in that moment.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point around like the physicality of the contrast of how she's showing up in the scene versus so many of those scenes that we've seen her in throughout the rest of the film, because she's so much more hunched over and small and looking away from the people that she's talking to in the scene. But you're right, in other scenes, we've seen her take up space and spread her arms wide as she's dancing through the streets of New York. And so the way that her physical body feels like it can or cannot take up space is such a reflection of how internally she's feeling small and awkward and kind of uncomfortable in this dinner party sequence. So that physical contrast is really noticeable too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. They hit it out of the park with this scene. There's so much to it and so much to learn about Frances, but it's also so effective in us as the audience feeling the uncomfortability that Frances is going through, but also making her more endearing at the same time, which is a tall task, but they're able to pull it off in this one pretty short scene.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And she's so endearing because she's so relatable. Like, we have all been stuck at these social functions where we're just like, man, I do not feel like I belong here and I am uncomfortable, but I am really trying and it is not landing well. So the just like humanness of that experience is all of us. We've all been there before. We've been Frances at some point in our lives, and that feels so comforting to feel that connection with this character.
Mm-hmm. You are not alone, Frances. We see you. We get you.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Well, this was our scene breakdown of an iconic moment from This was our scene breakdown of an iconic moment from Frances Ha. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Frame by Frame. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune into your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review. Let us know your thoughts about this dinner party scene from Frances Ha. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at moviesinUsPod, or email us at moviesinUspod@gmail.com. Keep an eye on this feed because we will be back soon with another Movies in Us film review. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk again with y'all very soon.